So I am happy to bring Dr. Redmond back. There's been an incredible amount of work done by this board, and of course all the foundational work done in the consultation through our members and our advisory committee. That the advisory committee numbers 50, as you know, and staff. So back to you, Mark, with the unveiling of the strategic framework.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm delighted to bring forward the strategic framework for an introduction to you. We won't be going through the framework in detail. However, we'll give you a taste of some of the direction that we're putting together. The work that we have undertaken since August last year has made one point clear, and that's our purpose. Our purpose is to power the research that transforms agriculture. And that is the banner headline in the strategic framework, which is made available for download earlier today. The document is a fast read. It's only took about 15 minutes to read. However, the contents are a lot more significant, and there's great direction to be mined from the work. I will apologize for the delay. Lydia and I will attest to the fact that after meeting with the board on Friday, when the board approved the framework, we did have some cleanup and page layouts to organize, and so the launch today was more necessitated out of process rather than any other form of delay. And we certainly wanted a quality product put in your hands, and that's what I believe we've done. The objective in terms of developing the framework was to listen to the producers. We wanted everyone to be able to say we've been heard. And so the process that we have followed created multiple opportunities for dialogue. We cast our nets wide looking at opportunities for Alberta agriculture in the future. And as a part of that net casting, which actually brought Ted Billier into our sphere of influence, and you'll be hearing a great deal in terms of the industry scans that we're participating in from him. Our third objective was to be unapologetically bold, to be aspirational. And this was a challenge, and Dr. Chalk and I often have something of a yin and yang relationship. I wanted to be highly aspirational, and Dr. Chalk kept asking, when are you going to show me the results? I think what you have before you is a great balance now of the plans to move forwards. And finally, you heard me in the first presentation I made have an eye to the farm gate. Everything we do, we take a lens looking back at a benefit at the farm gate. And so the process you've been engaged in, we're now at the end of the second phase. We've had the approval of the board. We're introducing the plan to you today. And we're very rapidly going to be moving into the development of action plans. Traditionally, businesses will say they have business plans. We'll be examining the resources that we have internally to work with, but also externally in terms of researchers, the T4Ps that we look for, and looking at improving our systems and processes. This will be an iterative work, and that's why we call this strategic plan that others may have developed. We call this a framework. It's a framework because it contains the principles that we are governed by, and it allows us to be agile and nimble and respond to opportunities. For example, the drought call that you saw today, some of the climate change work, which has been introduced with our partners during the year. The framework will allow us to be nimble and responsive. I will pay homage to the founding board, the inaugural board of RDAR. They put in place the vision, the mandate, and the values. that we live by today. You can see actually we've grown the value list by one, and that is courage. We need to be courageous in the decisions that we make and to step outside our comfort zone. And so the plans that you see stemming from this framework will encompass all of these initiatives with that long-term goal of agriculture in Alberta reaching its full potential. A magical moment that we had during the board staff retreat in November was gaining a greater understanding of who RDAR is. And to that point in November, and probably to this point today when we introduce this model broadly, I think there's not a clear understanding of the role of RDAR. We are not simply a funder of, somebody's playing with my slides, Lydia. We're not simply a funder of research. We are a trustee of the funds given to us by the Alberta government to invest in research. We're a trustee of those areas identified as lead priorities and needs by producers. But primarily, we are answerable to Albertans, the taxpayers who put the money into the system to begin with. They are the investors. The beneficiaries are clear in terms of it's the on-farm producers, and we see that extending to the food value chain and ultimately the consumers. In the middle, it is our role to assess research projects. We have the authority to grant funds to the T4P researchers to perform the work that will deliver the benefits. Ultimately, the researchers, through RDAR, is accountable to Albertans. To make everything run smoothly and clear, we have to be clear in our communication. So we're driven by accountability and outcomes, the benefits of the agriculture sector, and ultimately the consumer. So as we look at where we see RDAR being in 5 years' time, this is a new model, and we will be building trust in that model to deliver three main objectives. The first is to increase farm cash receipts, or net revenues, as one of our board members says. Dr. Chalik would say profits, but that is the driver. We want to increase exports. That will be the way we grow our markets. It aligns clearly with one of those objectives identified by the producers, and to add value and investments to the province and jobs. The primary role, and one that is a terrific challenge, is we want to see research adopted. It's not good enough to develop a practice. It has to be used broadly. And the benefits have to be focused on increasing competitiveness, profitability, productivity. We all know today we're being asked to do more with less. By the research we're doing and the adoption of that research, we will power new technologies. And finally, we're going to be working broadly. We don't want people working in isolation. That is not one of our, collaboration is one of our values. And so we'll be working collectively to create innovations to benefit people, animals, and the environment. We have 4 areas of strategic priority. Each has clear deliverables. We have put systems already in place in our first year, and we'll be building out on these as deliverables. And in this next slide, I'll show you the initiatives that we're going to be targeting in our first year. We'll be building details on this as we close this meeting today. We'll be looking at profitability and competitiveness with targeted investment in new crops, in livestock practices, in driving the production of agricultural materials. We'll be looking to secure food sources, build capacity not only in production, but capacity in processing. That is the way we're going to increase the overall revenue effect that agriculture has in Alberta. For sustainability, we'll be looking to drive the adoption of best management practices. In fact, I would say the development of best management practices and adoption of best management practices. We'll be looking to work in strong partnerships right from the beginning. We'll be looking to grow investment envelopes by working very closely with industry. And we'll be looking to manage our research portfolio to make sure that we are not overcommitted in any one particular area. And we're making sure that we are addressing all opportunities and we don't have gaps. And finally, we have our commitment to stakeholder engagement in person, working together collaboratively and putting together better research proposals, looking at driving successful research forwards. The measured outcomes that I alluded to earlier, these are the tests that RDAR is going to be held to. And so we have worked through some 30 potential outcomes to come down to this list. And in discussions with the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Rural Economic Development, they have challenged us in terms of, have you modeled these test systems and are you able to deliver results? They want to make sure that we are able to deliver on commitments that we make. We've got a number of areas marked by that dagger footnote symbol that we'll be looking to develop. Others are already well developed in terms of, we'll be working with the Gallup organization as a potential survey, quality survey performer to assess Class A member satisfaction. Our portfolio, you can see that we are driving hard on putting all of the money into investments. We have very little uncommitted funds left with the, you'll see by the springtime when we announce a number of other funding calls, we will be fully vested and we'll be leveraging those investments broadly with the private sector. We'll be having more projects engaged with the private sector, and we'll be counting new practices, technologies, and crop varieties seeded. So these are outcomes which would give us true outcome performance measurement at the farm gate. And with that brief introduction, I'm happy to take questions.
So far, Mark, we don't have any questions. I'm hoping we have a few and just open it to discussion. First, we do have a comment, and thank you, Doug, for noticing that we have the courage to step outside our comfort zones. And it's certainly something that we are encouraging. We thought it was important to put in our values. Questions for Mark?
If there are none, we will be happy to allow people to take the framework away and digest it, and for everybody to get comfortable for Ted's talk. So we'll give people a further minute, and then I'm happy to move forwards. I will at this point recognize everybody's input in terms of the development of this project. We did have over 200 respondents in our initial survey. We met with our full advisory committee for a year to develop this. The board met for a day and a half, and the staff have had extensive input. All of the RDAR staff have had extensive input in developing the framework. So thank you all, particularly Lydia, who did a significant amount of the lifting in terms of the publication work. And I see we actually do have some questions coming in now, and we also have a hand raised from Michael.
Okay, we've got Valerie first. Some of the metrics are developed. Where can you find the metrics that are already developed?
The first board of RDAR approved a business plan which had a number of metrics, so they would be available in that business plan. We were tracking well according to those metrics, but to be hard-nosed about some of them, the measures were not outcome directed. They were very subjective and couldn't be measured, which is what drove us hard to saying, okay, what are the real outcome determinants that that we can have? You know, some of the outcomes were, for example, an intellectual property strategy, and you know, RDAR's intellectual property strategy is the researchers own it, the funders own it. So that was work that was completed. Perhaps some of my senior leadership team can help me with some of the other deliverables. We did look to leveraging funds, which was to be 1 to 1.5. We've exceeded that at 2.3. I don't think we had metrics in terms of percentage of fund vesting. Can the team help me with any of the other existing metrics?
I'll just weigh in as board chair. That's a very good question. This area of metrics and measuring performance and adding value, that when it really gets down to establishing what they are, that's the serious business of management, staff, and board. It's an evolving process. We're new. Of course, we don't want to overpromise, and they have to be meaningful and impactful. So, you know, it's a moving target, and obviously improvement was needed. And so I think that, and also recognizing that it takes a long time for research initiatives in the main, years rather than months to come to fruition. I think it will require a bit of patience, and certainly we would look to anyone for suggestions as to metrics that we could incorporate. I'm not making any excuses. I don't have a definitive answer for you, but that's more context around as we sit and work through this to try and identify what's really meaningful and measurable.
We have a couple of other questions. Ole's asking about our working together to pursue greater federal investment funding. We are pleased to do that with our AFRED dollars. You'll appreciate that CAP funding already comes from the federal government, so it's not really eligible to be stacked, but we are happy to advance other courses. We are working closely, for example, with Genome Alberta, which is part of the Genome Canada initiative. So we are looking to drive home those benefits. And Ole, I know you've worked really closely with our other post-secondary institutes. Ole is the Associate Vice President Research at NATE, with a very willing group of colleges. We now have 9 universities and colleges working together to advance agriculture. So we're really keen to see that initiative move forwards and work with you in terms of bringing further federal dollars into the province. Lauren will be happy to know we're pursuing some discussions with research chairs, which are funding from the Tri-Council. Getting hands into producers in a meaningful way. Yes, that's absolutely front and center in discussions that we had with producers. I heard time again, we know about the research. We've read about the research. We want somebody to show us how to do the research. And so we are looking at ways of putting practices into the hands of producers in such a way supported by, for example, our colleges and our post-secondaries, so that it can be delivered in the right way at the right time. Question about 50% funding for crops and 50% funding for livestock. Between those two sectors, you'll remember from the pie chart that the divisions were, well, those were equal, but they didn't add up to 50%. We are being driven by opportunity. We're being driven by need. And so we have a flexible portfolio. If an opportunity presents in one area, you may see us increasing our investment in that particular area and then look to bring the portfolio back into balance over time.
And based on merit.
Absolutely. Based on merit, scientific approach, the producer, partner, private sector partnership to maximize leverage. I'm a very strong supporter of the Rancho Researcher Program that I believe Battle River has and Grow. Getting the producer engaged right out of the gate and maintaining that engagement is really key. I've worked with that approach in a number of other sectors in the past. The idea of coming up with a project, throwing it into a researcher's hands, let them go away and tinker with it for 3 years, and you get a camel. We want Percherons here. We want power to drive our industry. And so by having the producers engaged right out of the gate and maintaining that, keeping that dialogue open, that's why you see us really pressing now on communications, those TED type talks where people present ideas and we get to quiz backwards and forwards. Really, engagement is going to be the key to a healthy future. Okay,
as chair, I'm going to, Lydia, forgive me, but it's now we have used the time to 3:30. I am going to take a break for 5 minutes. We will come back. Up next will be our, we'll call it a TED Talk or a fireside chat. I can never measure up to Tom Steve as he did the Prairie Cereal Summit at the Banff Springs in front of a beautiful wood fireplace. I can't match that, but we'll have some fun with Ted and it will absolutely be an enlightened conversation. So back at 2:35, please.